Laziness doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't kick the door down and say, I'm here to ruin your life. It whispers, it negotiates, it tells you you deserve rest, even when you haven't earned it. It says you can do it tomorrow, and tomorrow feels harmless until tomorrow becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes a life. That's why laziness is so dangerous. Not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it's subtle, patient, and deeply psychological. Here's the truth most people don't want to confront. Laziness is not just about doing nothing. It's about avoiding effort, responsibility, and discomfort. And when you avoid those things, you're not just wasting time, you're losing pieces of yourself. Every hour you delay what you know you should do. You're training your mind to accept less than your potential. Neuroscience tells us that habits shape neural pathways. So when procrastination becomes your default, your brain literally rewires itself to resist effort. Over time, action feels harder and inaction feels normal. That's how laziness steals your future without you even noticing. Think about time for a moment. Time is the only resource. You cannot recover. Money can be earned again. Opportunities can sometimes come back in another form. But time, once it's gone, it's gone. Laziness feeds on time. It consumes hours, days, years, not in big chunks, but in small, seemingly insignificant moments. Scrolling when you should be studying, sleeping when you should be building, waiting when you should be moving. And one day you look back and realize you weren't robbed, you gave it away. Philosophically, this is where laziness becomes an existential problem. Existential thinkers argue that meaning is created through action and choice. You become who you are by what you consistently do. So when you consistently choose laziness, you're not just avoiding tasks, you're shaping an identity. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't finish, someone who doesn't push through, someone who could have been. That gap between who you are and who you know you could be is where frustration, regret, and self-doubt are born. Laziness doesn't just waste your time, it erodes your self-respect. And let's talk about opportunity. Opportunities rarely come when you feel ready. They come when preparation meets timing. Laziness disrupts preparation. So when the moment arrives, the interview, the chance, the opening, you're not equipped to seize it, and the world doesn't pause to wait for you to catch up. Someone else who was willing to work when it was uncomfortable steps into the space you left empty. That's not bad luck. That's cause and effect. Psychologically, laziness often disguises itself as fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being judged. It's easier to say I didn't try than to try and come up short. But understand this, avoiding effort doesn't protect you from pain. It postpones it and multiplies it. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. Laziness offers short-term relief and long-term consequences, and human beings are wired to prioritize the short-term unless they cannot consciously fight against it. This is why highly successful people are not necessarily more talented. They're more intentional. They understand that motivation is unreliable, waiting to feel like it is a trap. Laziness thrives on feelings. Discipline thrives on decisions. When you decide to act despite resistance, you reclaim control over your time, your mind, and your direction. You stop being a passive observer of your life and start becoming an active participant in it. So if this feels uncomfortable, that's good. Discomfort is awareness knocking at your door. Laziness has already taken enough from your time, your confidence, your possibilities. The question now isn't whether laziness is harmful. The question is whether you're willing to confront it before it takes anything else. Because, see, in the end, laziness doesn't destroy you by force. It destroys you by permission. And the moment you withdraw that permission is the moment your life begins to change. Once laziness has quietly taken your time and dulled your sense of urgency, it usually settles into something that feels harmless. Comfort. Comfort is the soft landing place where laziness feels justified. It's not chaos. It's not failure. It's not pain. It's familiarity. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Comfort doesn't look like an enemy. It looks like safety. It feels like peace. But psychologically and philosophically, comfort can become the most effective prison a human being will ever build. The human brain is wired to seek comfort. From an evolutionary standpoint, conserving energy made sense, but we're no longer We are fighting to survive in the wild. We're fighting to grow in a world of abundance and distraction. The same mechanism that once protected us now works against us. When comfort becomes the primary goal, progress becomes optional. And the moment progress becomes optional, discipline disappears. You stop asking what must be done and start asking what feels good right now. That shift may seem small, but it changes the entire trajectory of a life. Comfort teaches you to avoid discomfort, and discomfort is the entrance fee to every meaningful achievement. Growth requires tension. Learning requires struggle. Mastery requires repetition when the excitement is gone. But comfort tells you to stop as soon as it gets hard. It convinces you that rest is deserved even when effort has been minimum. Ow. Over time, your tolerance for difficulty shrinks. Tasks that once felt manageable start to feel overwhelming. Not because they changed, but because you did. Philosophers have long warned about this. Aristotle spoke of virtue as a habit formed through repeated action. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by practicing it. Comfort interrupts that practice. It replaces deliberate effort with convenience, and convenience, when overused, weakens character. You begin to outsource effort to technology, to other people, to excuses. The result is a slow decay of personal agency. You're still moving, but you're no longer steering. There's also a psychological cost that doesn't get talked about enough. Comfort creates a false sense of satisfaction. Feel busy without being productive, entertained without being fulfilled, relax without being restored. And because there's no immediate crisis, you assume everything is fine. But deep down, there's a quiet dissatisfaction, a sense that you're underutilized. That inner tension is your potential trying to get your attention. Comfort numbs it, but it doesn't eliminate it. Look closely at people who never break out of mediocrity. It's rarely because they lack intelligence or opportunity. It's because they become emotionally attached to comfort. They fear disruption more than they desire growth. They stay in jobs they hate because it's familiar. They avoid hard conversations because peace feels easier. They delay change because uncertainty feels threatening. Comfort becomes their identity, and anything that challenges it feels like an attack. But here's the paradox. The comfort zone is only comfortable in the short term. In the long run, it becomes suffocating. What starts as ease turns into stagnation. What starts as rest turns into rust. And the longer you stay there, the harder it is to leave, because you've trained your mind to associate discomfort with danger rather than devil. That's why growth feels scary. Not because it's harmful, but because it's unfamiliar. High performers understand this at a fundamental level. They don't chase comfort, they manage it. They rest intentionally, not habitually. They understand that comfort is a tool, not a lifestyle. Used correctly, it restores energy. Used excessively, it drains ambition. Discipline, on the other hand, expands. DS capacity. It makes hard things feel normal and normal things feel easy. Over time, what once required effort becomes automatic. That's the real freedom, not comfort, but capability. So the real question isn't whether comfort feels good. Of course it does. The question is what it's costing you. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you're making a trade. Short-term ease for long-term limiter. Temporary relief for permanent delay. And no one escapes that exchange without paying the price. If you want to move forward, you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable on purpose. You have to stop asking, how can I make this easier? And start asking, how can this make me stronger? Because comfort will keep you safe, but it will never make you significant. And if you stay comfortable long enough, you won't just avoid growth, you'll forget what you're capable of. Comfort is not the enemy when it's controlled, but when it controls you, it quietly replaces your potential with permission to stay the same. And growth has never lived in the same place as ease. If laziness steals your time and comfort keeps you trapped, then discipline is the only thing strong enough to break the sea. But discipline is often misunderstood. People imagine it as something extreme. Wake up at 4 a.m., grind nonstop, overhaul your entire life in a single moment. That image intimidates people, and intimidation feeds avoidance. The truth is, laziness isn't defeated by dramatic change. It's defeated by small, consistent acts of discipline done when no one is watching. Psychologically, the brain rests. It's sudden, massive shifts. It perceives them as threats, but it adapts remarkably well to small, repeated behaviors. This is why habits are so powerful. Every time you complete a small task you didn't feel like doing, you send a signal to your brain, I'm the kind of person who follows through. That identity shift matters more than the task itself. Discipline isn't just about productivity. It's about self-trust. And self-trust is built one action at a time. Philosophers have long understood that character is formed through repetition. You don't wake up one day and become disciplined. You practice discipline until it becomes part of who you are. That practice begins with simple decisions, getting up when the alarm rings, starting before you feel ready, finishing what you start even when the excitement fades. These moments seem insignificant, but they are where your internal authority is established. Each small win is a vote for the person you are becoming. Laziness thrives on overwhelm. It tells you the task is too big, the journey too long, the effort too demanding. Discipline responds by breaking the task down. Not next year, not next month. What can you do in the next 10 minutes? Momentum doesn't come from motivation. It comes from movement. Action precedes clarity. Once you start, resistance weakens. The mind stops negotiating and starts cooperating. There's also a critical emotional element here. Many people struggle with laziness because they associate discipline with punishment. They think of it as forcing themselves, denying themselves, suffering unnecessarily. But real discipline is an act of self-respect. It's choosing long-term well-being over short-term comfort. It's saying, I won't betray my future for the sake of how I feel right now. That's not cruelty. That's care. Small acts of discipline rewire your reward system. Instead of chasing instant gratification, you begin to experience satisfaction from progress. You learn to delay pleasure, and in doing so, you increase its intensity. Completing a hard task creates a deeper sense of fulfillment than avoiding it ever could. Over time, this changes what you crave. You stop craving ease and start craving growth. That's when discipline stops feeling heavy and starts feeling natural. Look at people who seem unstoppable. They're not superhuman. They've just mastered consistency. They show up even on low energy days. They keep promises to themselves. They don't rely on moods to determine their actions. That reliability compounds. One disciplined day becomes a disciplined week. A disciplined week becomes a disciplined year. And suddenly the life that once felt out of reach feels inevitable. There's also something empowering about doing small disciplined acts in private. No applause, no validation, just you and your standards. That's where confidence is born. Not from what you say you'll do, but from what you repeatedly prove you can do. Laziness weakens your voice. Discipline strengthens it. Over time, your inner dialogue changes from I should to I will. And that shift changes how you move through the world. You don't need to wait for the perfect plan. You don't need ideal conditions. You need a decision followed by an action, no matter how small. Read one page, write one paragraph, make one call, take one step. Discipline doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for participation. And participation is always available, even on your worst days. The battle against laziness is not won in moments of inspiration. It's won in moments of choice. When you choose to act despite resistance, you reclaim control over your life. And when those choices become habits, laziness loses its grip. So start small, but start today. Because the smallest disciplined action repeated daily will eventually outweigh the strongest excuse. And the life you want is built the same way discipline is, one deliberate step at a time. When you strip everything down, talent, background, luck, circumstances, you're left with one undeniable truth. Your future is being shaped right now by what you repeatedly choose to do today. Not in the big moments, not in the dramatic turning points we like to talk about, but in the ordinary decisions that seem too small to matter. That's where destiny is built. And that's why habits are not just routines. They are votes cast daily for the life you will eventually live. Psychologically, the mind is always looking for patterns. What you do often becomes what you default to. Action becomes automatic. Inaction becomes automatic. Effort becomes normal, or avoidance does. There is no neutral ground. You are either reinforcing behavior that move you forward or ones that quietly hold you back. The danger is that habits work whether you're aware of them or not. By the time most people notice the results, the pattern is already deeply rooted. Philosophically, this touches on responsibility. Existential thinkers argue that we are defined by our choices, not our intentions. It's easy to intend a better future. It's harder to see it consistently. Every day you wake up and make a decision, sometimes consciously, often unconsciously, about whether you will act or delay, engage or withdraw, push or retreat. And those decisions accumulate. A single choice won't define you, but 1,000 similar ones will. This is where laziness becomes most destructive. It doesn't just affect what you do today, it affects who you become tomorrow. When you repeatedly choose the easier path, you train yourself to expect ease. When you repeatedly avoid effort, you train yourself to fear challenge. Over time, your world shrinks to match your habits. Your goals become more realistic, which is often just another word for compromise. Not because you couldn't do more, but because you stopped demanding more from yourself. On the other H, and disciplined habits create a different future, not overnight, but inevitably. They compound, just like interest, just like neglect. You may not see the payoff in the beginning, which is why most people quit, but consistency is always working, even when results are invisible. The student who studies A, your little every day doesn't feel brilliant in the moment, but one day they realize they understand what others struggle with. The person who trains consistently doesn't notice daily changes, but one day their body and mind are unrecognizable. The future arrives quietly, then all at once. There's also a moral dimension to this. You owe something to your future self. That person will live with the consequences of what you choose now. When you skip the work, delay the effort, or settle for less, you're not just making a personal choice, you're passing a burden forward. Discipline is an act of integrity across time. It's keeping promises to a version of you that can't speak yet, but will feel everything you decide today. Many people think they'll get serious one day, but one day is not a day of the week. It's a concept that keeps responsibility safely out of reach. The truth is, the future is not built later. It's built now in the moments you think don't count. That's why awareness matters. Once you understand that every habit is shaping your direction, neutrality disappears. Every action either reinforces the L you want or strengthens the one you're trying to escape. The good news is this: the same mechanism that builds regret can build greatness. You don't need to change everything. You need to change something and then repeat it. One habit practiced daily can alter your trajectory. The future is not a mystery. It's a mirror. It reflects the patterns you live by. Change the pattern and the reference. Action changes with it. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for clarity. Don't wait for the perfect moment. The moment you act with intention is the moment the future starts bending in your favor, because laziness always asks for tomorrow, but purpose demands today. At some point, awareness has to turn into ownership. You can understand laziness, analyze comfort, respect discipline, and ache in. This is the white power of habits. But if you don't take personal responsibility, none of it changes anything. This is where the conversation gets real, because the final barrier between insight and transformation is accountability. Not blaming circumstances, not waiting for permission, not outsourcing responsibility to motivation, systems, or other people. Ownership is the moment you stop asking why live. E is hard, and start asking what you're willing to do about it. Psychologically, ownership is powerful because it restores agency. Many people feel stuck, not because they lack options, but because they've trained themselves to believe they're powerless. Laziness feeds that belief. It tells you external conditions control your progress, your past, your environment, your mood. Responsibility challenge that narrative. It says, I may not control everything, but I control my response. And that shift from victim to agent changes how the brain engages with effort. When people believe their actions matter, persistence increases. When they don't, avoidance feels rational. Philosophically, this is the line between drifting and choosing. Existential thought is clear on this. Meaning is not discovered. Red is created through commitment. You become responsible the moment you realize no one is coming to rescue you from your own potential. That's not pessimism, it's freedom. Because if no one else is responsible for your growth, then no one else can limit it either. Laziness hates responsibility because responsibility removes excuses. Once you accept that your life is largely shaped by your choice. CES, procrastination loses its camouflage. You can no longer pretend delay is harmless or comfort is neutral. You see every decision for what it is, a direction, and that clarity can be uncomfortable. But discomfort here is productive. It sharpens focus. It forces honesty. Ownership also changes how you experience failure. When you take responsibility, failure stops being an identity and becomes information. You don't say, this proves I'm not capable. You say, this shows me what needs work. Laziness avoids failure by avoiding effort. Responsibility accepts failure as part of progress. That's why disciplined people recover faster. They're not protecting their ego. They're building their capacity. There's also a deeper level to this. Responsibility is how you reclaim self-respect. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce trust with yourself. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken it. Over time, that internal relationship determines your confidence more than any external validation. You don't feel strong because people believe in you. You feel strong because you believe in yourself. And belief is built through consistent follow-through. This is where standards come in. Lazy people live by feelings. Responsible people live by standards. Feelings change. Standards don't. When you decide in advance who you are and how you operate, daily decisions become simpler. You don't negotiate with resistance. You refer to your standard. This is what I do. That mindset removes drama from discipline. It's not about forcing yourself. It's about honoring your word. And understand this, responsibility is contagious. When you take ownership of your life, you raise the expectations you have for yourself. And that influences everyone around you. Your presence changes. Your energy changes. People listen differently when they sense self-command. You don't need to announce discipline. It shows up in how you move, how you speak, how you follow, rough. Most people wait for external accountability, a deadline, a boss, a crisis. But the strongest form of accountability is internal. It's waking up knowing no one is watching and choosing to act anyway. That's where laziness dies, not in public motivation, but in private decisions. When you stop letting yourself off the hook, progress becomes unavoidable. So here's the final truth. You don't overcome laziness by fighting it. You overcome it by outgrowing it. And you outgrow it the moment you take full responsibility for who you are becoming. No excuses, no delays, no negotiations.